Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, and I wish to introduce to you the factions of the Warhammer 40K universe. So, let us explore the faction known as the 14th Legion of the Legiones Astartes, previously known as the Dusk Raiders, who are now infamously known across the galaxy as the Death Guard. Gentle listener, fear not if you hear terms that you do not yet know. I shall explain them all in my report on Horus Heresy, which should be available very soon. I hope to see you then. The Death Guard are one of the most feared forces at the disposal of the corrupting powers, the dark gods of chaos. They serve Nurgle, the great god of decay. He has gifted them with a level of resilience that makes their deaths difficult to achieve, and their onward march almost impossible to stem. They feel no pain. They're immune to any efforts to poison or contaminate them with biological weaponry, and can sustain damage that would kill even a normal Astartes. Their advent also spells doom for any planet, for even if the forces of the Death Guard are thrown back, they leave in their wake a preternatural corruption, plagues and blights that change the very ecosystem until it is a scene from hell, a dark mirror of Nurgle's own garden in the warp. Thus do the Death Guard march across the galaxy, and all in their path and wake wail in logical terror of their dark, corrupting presence. But it was not always this way. The Death Guard were once great warriors, and by their blood, sweat and sacrifice was the very Imperium itself forged. So far have they fallen. I will now lean on existing wisdom before I get to the heart of the matter. To quote, "The origins of the Dusk Raiders can be found during the Unification Wars. The base human stock for the majority of the first Space Marine legions to be raised came from Terra, and in the case of the 14th Legion, the main bulk of the gene recruits used were drawn from the ancient and warlike clans of Old Albia, situated in southeastern Europe, where once had been the ancient nation-state of Albania. The recruitment of the Sons of Albia served a twofold purpose. Firstly, and most importantly, it drew off the cream of whole generations of strength from a Terran realm, now friend and ally to the Imperium, but never fully trusted. For Albia, towering amid the northern Atlan wilderness, had once been a true rival for the Emperor, for control of the destiny of mankind. By recruiting their brightest and best into the Legiones Astartes, and the other growing imperial organizations marked for war amid the stars, the Emperor ensured that they could never threaten the unification from within. Secondly, it subsumed into the Emperor's forces all the martial traditions and bloodlines that had for centuries held much of Terra under their cruel grasp, and had eventually overcome the Pan-Pacific Empire under the rule of its unspeakable king, Nathan Doom. Such a breed of relentless warlords and soldier scientists was an invaluable resource that the Emperor was loath to waste. By the time the Unification Wars had begun, the warlord clans of Old Albia had thrown off the tyranny of the last descendants of the unspeakable king, and did not readily bend their knee to the Emperor, for they refused to have another master in Doom's place. Instead, the Albians met the Emperor's regiments of Thunder Warriors with their own battalions of steam-belching proto-dreadnoughts and heavily armed Ironside soldiers. In battle after battle, the forces of the Unification were held in check, although at a shattering cost for the Albanians, who would not give in despite the Imperial onslaught. Impressed with the Albanians' martial temper and indomitable spirit, the Emperor called for a ceasefire and sought victory over the warlord clans through peaceful negotiation, understanding that to crush them by force alone would entail a grinding war of attrition that would only serve to decimate his own forces and gain him naught but a handful of ashes as a prize of war. The Emperor pursued peace despite the protestations of his human counselors and generals. Going before them, it is said, unarmed and clothed in white and crimson, the Emperor spoke to the warlords' parliament and laid before them his vision of a future mankind reunited and ascendant, of tyrants toppled and nightmares slain. He offered them glory amongst the stars, and most importantly, redemption for many hundreds of years of kinslaying and bloodshed. To the shock of many, the warlords of Old Albia accepted the Emperor's vision. In doing so, the Albion clans became among the Unification's most zealous supporters, although still untrusted by many, lending their warriors and secrets long kept for the Emperor's eyes alone. Most importantly for the future of humanity, the Albions sacrificed their sons to become some of the first Space Marines. The 15th Legion quickly developed in the use of tactics and methods of warfare that their Ironside forebears would have found utterly familiar. Matched with the stoic temperaments and gene-crafted aptitude which few doubted had been the Emperor's design all along. Operating in the role of heavy infantry, the Astartes of the 14th Legion were experts at survival and endurance, and quickly gained a reputation among the other newly forged legions as relentless and disciplined fighters. In defense, they were stubborn and indefatigable, able to stand unwaveringly against the heaviest fire and hold their position against all comers to the last living body and bolter shell if needed. In attack, they systematically destroyed a given target, crashing upon an enemy in wave after wave of armoured bodies, excelling in close-range firefights and bloody attrition. In the solar decades that followed, the renamed 14th Legion fought tirelessly in the service of the Great Crusade. Never relenting in battle, they pursued the liberation of humanity with a fervour the Great Crusade had never known. Their restless fleet ploughed the cold void from one campaign to the next, resupplying on the move, never pausing but to make war. The Death Guard did not garrison, they did not build, they only tore down and slew, coldly, determinedly, and with the inexorable progress of a contagion or a tsunami wave. The worlds fell before them. Eventually, as with the other legions, their Primarch, their gene-sire, Mortarion, was discovered and given command of the 14th. Over time, Mortarion shaped the creed and practice of the Death Guard, his beliefs in many ways forming a natural extension of their own, beliefs and doctrines becoming ever more refined and extreme. At the heart of them was the unshakable determination that mankind should be free of oppression and terror. Such freedom could only be won in the Primarch's mind by destroying those that would shackle and devour humanity. This was a war to be fought without mercy or limit, without restraint or relenting. The battle for the human future was one that could only be won by enduring any hardship, no matter how terrible, and not shirking from any act, no matter how savage, in pursuit of victory. This single end, the liberation of humanity, to Mortarion's creed, justified any means. Mortarion took command of his new army with proprietal severity. Though he was cold and aloof towards his sons, they worshipped him unquestioningly and followed his teachings to the letter. Mortarion saw in them an opportunity to continue his labours upon Barbarous. He would forge the Death Guard into perfect infantrymen, adaptable and self-reliant warriors who specialised in the use of durable weaponry that was easily maintained and resupplied. The Death Guard were taught to choose the best ground and then to grind their enemies down upon it with massed infantry formations. They were the anvil to their allies' hammers, or else the bludgeon that battered the foe into submission. Some amongst Mortarion's brother Primarchs disparaged his tactics as blunt and unimaginative. In truth, the doctrines of the Death Guard were durable and efficient, and demonstrated a remarkable talent for grassroots martial organization that earned the Death Guard a truly impressive honor roll of victories during the Great Crusade. Mortarion's gene seed made his sons hardy. Through his swiftly imposed regimens of toxin hardening and extreme environmental tempering, the former Dusk Raiders became more durable than ever. This inherent toughness only increased, for Mortarion recruited the bulk of his new legionaries from Barbarous. The Death Guard were rightly proud of their indomitable physiology. They deployed into the most hazardous war zones where even the other Space Marines hesitated to tread, and made widespread use of rad and phosphex weapons, alongside prescribed viral agents that soon earned them something of a dark reputation amongst their brothers. Mortarion cared not for the distaste of his peers. His personal mission was the overthrowing of tyrants, being such as the Carrion Lords of Barbarous, and he took pride that his sons could employ their own rugged strength to defend those too weak to protect themselves. Still, for all their achievements, the labours of the Death Guard went largely unrecognised. Mortarion was far closer to his brother Horus than to his sire, the Emperor, believing that the former recognised his worth far better than the latter ever would. Worse, the longer they fought to shield the weak from oppression, the more the Death Guard became overly enamoured of their own fortitude and dismissive of those too weak to protect themselves. Mortarion believed that victory in battle came through sheer resilience, and Horus, who used the strengths and weaknesses of the different legions to create the most efficient fighting force possible, used his legion in coordination with Mortarion's frequently. Mortarion and the Death Guard would draw out the enemy and tire them down, and then the Lunar Wolves would strike. This combat tactic worked brilliantly, and Mortarion grew close to Horus. The Lord of Death was a grim and driven Primarch. His breathing apparatus and great size an inseparable component of his aspect. The pallid, hairless Primarch was viewed by others as a freak, and was distant from all his brother Primarchs save Horus and Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter. Some even whispered that Mortarion was more loyal to Horus than he was to the Emperor. However, the Emperor claimed that loyalty to Horus was de facto loyalty to the Emperor, for the two were that close. Events would prove the Emperor sorely mistaken. When the War Master Horus turned to chaos, it did not require much effort to drag Mortarion and his Death Guard Legion down with him. Horus had been one of the few Primarchs with whom Mortarion had felt comfortable, and as such he showed more loyalty to the War Master during the Great Crusade than to the Emperor himself. In addition to this, First Captain Callus Typhon, Mortarion's right-hand man, had long been a secret follower of the ruinous powers, and eagerly manipulated the rest of the Death Guard into treading the path of damnation. Mortarion revealed his true colours during the scouring of Istvan III, when he willingly sent potentially loyalist elements of the Death Guard, almost one-third of his legion, into Horus's trap. Once the Astartes who remained loyal to the Emperor were purged, the Death Guard then fought alongside their traitor brethren during the drop site massacre on Istvan V. End quote. So it is written in the Imperium, but it was all a lie. The corpse god, the false prophet, the Emperor lied. The creep of wizards and sorcerers into the legions were supported by Magnus and the Angel of Blood, ever the pretty favourites of our erstwhile sire. Despite Nikeah, it still crept on. It was Horus who unshackled us from the bonds of servitude, who revealed the great lie. He unclothed the false god and revealed the Emperor's vision for his dark future, his pitiless domain where all would worship him or die. So the Death Guard joined with their brothers and rebelled against this oncoming tyranny. And during the course of our rebellion, we lost our father, the Emperor. But we found our grandfather, a true father, a good father, a bounteous father. Nurgle, the grandfather of all. His blessings are beauteous and profound. His power is without limits, and he truly, deeply, totally loves every last thing in the galaxy and will embrace it and bring it into his bosom. Sometimes, like any good parent, he must punish. Thus he sends us to fulfill this need, but we always leave his blessings, his love, where'er he sends us. Though we punish, we also reward. For him, for Nurgle, we will kill, we will live, and we will die. But there is no true death in the service of the Grandfather, for he is the grandfather of all. He is Nurgle, the Lord of Abundance, and in his service there is only life eternal. Gentle listener, I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. If you have enjoyed my brief introduction to the Death Guard, then please consider liking and subscribing. I will be covering other worshippers of the ruinous powers this week, and I would not want you to miss out.